We have several candidates, and you guys have 1 minute each to talk about your campaign.
Hello everyone, my name is Robert Lane. I'm with Justice Jeff Brown's campaign, and I'm going around the state collecting signatures. All statewide candidates have to get a certain number of signatures to qualify for the ballot. And so thank you for everyone who's already signed. So from Governor Abbott's going to field representative doing the same thing. And this simply states that you will vote in the Republican primary, not the Democrat primary or any other primary. And if you go to convention, you can only go to the Republican convention. And so this is what you pledge to do when you sign any Republican statewide officials petitions. And I do apologize, I have to skip out a little early, and I know you're a wonderful speaker. I have a civics program I have to go coach a little bit, so I apologize I can't stay. So, if anyone hasn't already signed, can I pass the clipboard over to you all?
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next candidate.
Good evening, I'm Victor Johnson from Pflugerville, and I'm running for seat number 6 in the Pflugerville City Council. And I promise everybody a race to the end. No matter who's in it against me or whatever happens, it's a race to the end. Put me in the office, you'll see me waist deep in our budget for the upcoming fiscal year, because that needs to be straightened out big time. We need to get the budget straightened out. We need to get support for our infrastructure, which has been sadly neglected for many, many years, and it needs to be fixed. And my final issue is going to be the downtown revitalization effort. I'm the president of the Pflugerville Downtown Association, and I intend to port the knowledge that I gained there over to the city council and really go to work on revitalizing the city of Pflugerville. And I hope I got your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And
Chris Lee.
you're talking
Yes.
for Abbott? Go ahead.
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Chris. I'm with Governor Abbott's re-election campaign. I think I've met most of you in the room today. If I haven't, I apologize, and I will meet you before you leave, promise. I'm also collecting signatures. I have a clipboard I'll pass around for Governor Abbott's name to go on the Republican primary for governor. He's running for that again. I don't know if you caught on to that, but I'm also here to just talk about if anybody's interested in volunteering for the governor. We are starting early and we're starting strong with block walking. I was there earlier. I apologize if you smell a little weird thing coming from me, but I've been out in the heat and I love your help. So if you're also interested or know people who would be interested in block walking, please send them my way. I have business cards I can give you that you can pass out to anybody. I'm here in the North Austin area. I got Cedar Park, Round Rock, and Pflugerville. So you'll probably see me at more than one of these. Love being here. Thank you for having me. And that's all I got.
Thank you. Anybody else? Running for? Okay. We have a couple of announcements from the Republican Party. This is Stephen Wan. He's the outreach director for the Asians for the Texas Republican Party. Stephen Wan.
Yes, thank you, Giant. Great to see everyone here tonight. Just a couple of updates from headquarters. I know I always get questions about what's happening at RPT. We've obviously had some leadership change early in the summer, which you should have gotten a report at the last meeting. But later this month, there is a campaign management school going on here in Austin. If you know anyone that's interested, please let me know. I can direct you to the application on our website. It's the end of the month, I think the 29th, 30th, and 31st. And I believe our guest speaker tonight is a previous graduate of the campaign management school, so it works, right? You too can get elected to Austin City Council. If you're a TARA member, I do have business cards here as a reminder. Help spread the word. Grab a stack of business cards. If you're not a member, hope I'm not stealing Anthony's wind here, but sign up, become a TARA member, and help spread the message. And I will also be passing around a property tax reform petition. So if you'd like to sign that before you leave tonight, that would be great. And we're compiling these signatures and looking at what we can do to get them to the governor so that he knows that the grassroots have his back when it comes to property tax reform. That's it for me. So back to
Thank you.
Giant.
I have one announcement for TERA. That's statewide. There's an organization, Texas Asian Republican Assembly. Their branch is in Dallas. We are the Austin branch. There's one in San Antonio and one in Houston. Actually, Houston branch was around for 30 years, and then we made the state organization later. The statewide TERA is having fundraising on January 20th in Dallas. George P. Bush will be the speaker, and just keep your eyes open and mark it on your calendar if you want to go to Dallas and spend a night there, meet other Asian active in the Republican Party. At this time, I'd like to turn the control of the meeting over to our Vice President. He is actually the big wheeler and dealer. He keeps websites up to date, the Facebook up to date,
You're too
keeps
kind.
all the RSVPs up, keep track of it, and we both work on the bank.
All right,
Anthony
welcome
Mann.
everybody. Good to see a lot of familiar faces and some new ones. I'm just going to do a quick political update about what's going on with the state and introduce our speaker. So the state is in special session and the Senate is moving at pretty fast speed. They pretty much passed all 20 priorities that the governor has. The House has only passed the sunset bill and the abortion recording bill. Everything else is kind of moving at a snail's pace. The House is conservative majority, but tends to be a little bit more liberal and dragging their feet on some of the priorities, namely this bathroom bill, which I don't know a lot of people that really like, but they're trying to drag out the time so that they don't have to vote on it. I don't know how it got to be such a big issue. We shouldn't have to worry about it, but it is. I like the property tax bill, and I'll be interested to hear our speaker what her opinion on the property tax bill is. As you may not know, right now all of our taxes are capped at 8%. Cities like Austin, like Pflugerville, cannot raise they call it the M&O, maintenance and operation budget, more than 8% without having an election. Well, Pflugerville tried to raise it to the maximum, and I actually at the last meeting spoke up saying, hey, what are you guys doing this? Our assessments are up 10%. We don't need 8% plus another, it was like a 13% increase. So they actually, luckily we have a pretty conservative Pflugerville City Council, and they went back to the same rate. So it's still a 10% raise, but it's the same thing. But the state is proposing to cap it at, well, the Senate wanted 4%, then the House at 6%, and then there was 5%. So hopefully they do something, because inflation is at, according to the government, 1.6%. So why does the city want to raise it 8% when inflation is under 2%? So they're trying to cap it, and I hope that they do cap it to prevent cities like Pflugerville and Austin from continually rising. As we all know, we live in Travis County. Our property taxes, our assessments are going up like crazy. But just because our assessments goes up crazy doesn't mean we pay more. We pay more because the city council votes to increase the rate or keep the rate the same, and we end up paying more. And I know our guest has fought very hard to keep that as level as possible. She's kind of a lone ranger on this, and the rest of the council members don't agree. They think Austin can keep on spending, which is unfortunate. There's also an annexation bill, which says that if you're over 500 people in your county, you need to vote, right? Common sense. You want to be part of the city or don't, let the people vote. Right now, cities can just annex you and you don't have a say, and you kind of have to go along with it. So I hope that one passes. Then there's a couple of what I call freedom bills, and our guests probably are familiar with this. Tree cutting ban, Airbnb, mobile devices. Cities have notoriously restricted their citizens from doing basic things. And Abbott wants to curtail that and prevent that. And you know, this is kind of like the Uber bill when Austin prevented Uber and Lyft from coming in. It's about freedom, and it's not really about ride sharing, but our guests have fought for that, and we didn't win in Austin, but we won on the state level. So that's that update. So our guest today is Austin City Councilwoman Ellen Troxclair. She's the only conservative on the council. She was elected in 2014, District 8. After the council went to 10-1, before the council, you could vote, you could be anywhere and be elected, and most of the members were in downtown Austin. So now they broke it up into 10 districts, about 90,000 population, and she represents the Southwest 8th District. She's the youngest woman to ever serve as city council. She's married to Caleb. He was recently appointed precinct chair 317. A couple months ago, I was there, and when he stood up and he said his name was Caleb Troxclair, I was like, "Hey, do you know?" He said, "Yeah, she's my wife." I was like, "Oh, okay." So Ellen was awarded the TCRP Rising Star Award in the last gala. So she is probably the most prominent conservative in Travis County. You know, Travis County is, what do they call it, the blueberry in a tomato soup. And she's the only one fighting for conservative values on the city council. Unfortunately, Don Zimmerman lost. He was kind of the odd man out, and he got replaced. And there was Sherry Gallo. She supposedly was conservative. I don't know. She voted 90% of the time with the other wing, but you know, we gave her $5,000, and I think it was a waste.
She was more conservative than many others.
Okay. But right now, it's pretty clear that Ellen is the only one fighting for us. So this is the first time we met here, but we've chatted online. Although I live in Pflugerville, I was a big proponent of Uber and Lyft. And I've talked to the city council before, and I've been following it through all of the turmoil that Austin has had. I sat through a number of the committee meetings. I saw her fight for Uber and Lyft to be in Austin. I saw that you went to the committee meetings on the mobility committee when you weren't even a member, but she was there fighting for rideshare, fighting for the freedom to run our own business, do what we want. When it lost, I saw you testify at the state level, and last month Greg Abbott signed HB 100, and Uber and Lyft is finally back in the state of Texas. And I see somebody else that testified here just came in, Callahan, right? You have a blog. Con, sorry. So appreciate your efforts doing that. You know, I think the whole Uber and Lyft thing, it's not really about driving people around, it's about freedom, and one of the principal tenets of being conservative is freedom. So it takes a lot of courage to be the Lone Ranger fighting for personal freedom. The Statesman calls Ellen the lone conservative. So Ellen also recently pushed through repealing the lemonade bill. You know, it was illegal in Austin to put up a lemonade stand without getting a permit.
For
Now, I was very surprised.
For $35.
Whatever, it's ridiculous. And I thought they weren't going to pass that, but it tells me that we have hope at our city council that there is some limits to their control. So I'm very glad that Austin has somebody fighting for our conservative principle. Without Ellen at the city hall, it would just be one big echo chamber. So please, everybody, welcome Ellen Troxclair. So we're just going to talk about how you got involved. You know, we're a relatively new organization, so we kind of want to know how you started and getting involved with politics and your campaign efforts, and talk about some of the issues that I brought up.
Yeah, of course. You know, I was a staffer at the Capitol, 2-3 years ago when the council went through, the Austin City Council went through the change from the at-large system to a 10-1 system. And I saw that there was an opportunity for some of the districts, including Southwest Austin, to elect someone who had a little bit more common sense, someone who was going to be responsible with taxpayer dollars, and who was going to advocate for what I feel is kind of the average citizen that doesn't always have a voice at City Hall, then or now. So I actually, my husband and I got together with some friends and we decided to pool some money to try to give whatever candidate that we liked a good start, a good campaign contribution. And so when we went and looked at the candidates at the time, I had no intention of running. We just wanted to support whoever we thought was the best person. We found that there wasn't anybody that we were excited about supporting. So, that was really, I was really upset about that because I really thought that this was such a wonderful opportunity for Austin and an opportunity that we shouldn't give up. And so ultimately I decided to put my name in the hat. It was pretty close to the filing deadline and I didn't have a whole lot of time to think about it, which probably was a good thing because I might have backed out if I had more time to talk myself out of it, but I didn't. And here I am a couple years later and so happy to represent the good people of Southwest Austin and to be a voice for a lot of people who don't live in my district, who don't feel like they have another council member to turn to that will support them in their in what they want to see for their lives and their families. So do you want me to just keep talking? You want me to ask? You want me to answer any more questions? Just keep going?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
we'll take questions in a
You
little
can
bit.
take questions later.
Yeah, so, we'll talk about 3 things that I think might be interesting to this crowd. First of all, kind of the budget and affordability issues overall. Second, the homestead exemption, which I'm sure that you've all heard about, but is still not implemented like the majority of the council insisted they would when they ran for office. And last, I'll talk about Code Next because that's the rewrite process that the city is going through. I see heads nodding, so it seems like most people are kind of familiar with a lot of the issues. So I'll just do a brief overview, and y'all feel free to interrupt me or just chime in afterwards, and I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have. So I'm proud to be the fiscal conservative. I feel like I am a broken record sometimes at City Hall because it seems like every council meeting there are more and more issues or more things that we're spending money on unnecessarily. And then we get to budget season and we're up, the city of Austin is limited to an 8% year-over-year increase by the state of Texas, and the city is reaching that limit every single year, which is crazy. On top of basically 10% appraisals going up 10% every single year. So, long story short, the pace is completely unsustainable. Your property taxes will double in 9 years in Austin, even then, with unprecedented growth in the city, we have more new revenue than ever before from new development, new permitting fees, new sales taxes, etc. We are still continuing to turn back to the taxpayers for more and more money. And actually, this year it's gotten so bad that the city manager is having to use recession time tactics, that she's asked every department to submit 1% in cuts from their department. I mean, that's unheard of. It's great, but it's only so that we can stay under the 8% max. I mean, they're not going to actually reduce anything that they're not otherwise required to reduce under existing city law. But I mean, that's how out of control it is. That we're in times of unprecedented growth and we're having to use
So you're in favor of the state to cap that to
yes,
4 or 5%.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that state bill. It was SB2 during regular session. And are we talking about the same?
Yeah.
The
Now it's like
rate bill?
SB1, I think.
Yeah, now it's SB1. So I kind of broke from the Texas Municipal League line of thinking to stand up for taxpayers. And I don't think that it's the state legislature's job to protect their local elected officials. I think that it's their job to protect the taxpayers and to protect the people who elected them. So I absolutely think that the state of Texas has a vested interest in making sure that the low tax, reasonable regulatory environment that has led to so much prosperity for the state is not undermined by an affordability crisis that is brought on by local governments. So I think Actually, I don't know if you know, but Adam, I know it was heard, there was a formal meeting in Ways and Means today. I don't know what they, if or what they ended up voting out, but.
What I heard was that the committee substituted the Bonin bill onto SB1, so that's basically the bill that has, it does get you to automatic rollbacks, but it's 6% and with some really big exemptions in it. Don't worry, Austin would still be covered. But a lot of the smaller counties and a lot of the things that have the folks in the rural areas really upset right now is not addressed in the bill. But
Yeah.
it would cover us
Right, yep.
at 6%, which is better than where we are now.
Yeah, well, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that legislation is passed, and people were really surprised to see that Lee Leffingwell, the most recent Austin mayor, testified in
I saw
favor
that.
of that bill in the Senate, which is just such a testament to how out of control the city has gotten. It is really not a partisan issue. It is really about we need to be pragmatic, and we need to make sure that we have sound financial sustainable path for the city going forward. And everybody talks about having growth pay for itself, and that is not what Austin is doing. We had over $50 million in new revenue last year from those new fees, and so I don't know, that's the money that should be used to increase services in order to provide police, fire, EMS, roads, etc. for the new people who are moving here. It shouldn't be 8% year over year over year over year. So that's kind of an update on where we are in as far as that goes. We're coming up on the budget cycle for this next fiscal year. So this is kind of the time for, if you've ever thought about getting involved in anything city related and you want to get involved in the budget process, tomorrow actually the city manager is going to be presenting the proposed budget for the next year, and then over the next month or so the council will be kind of going back and forth, taking money here, putting it over here, etc. And there's going to be a couple of public hearings. So if you're not already on my email list or connected with me on Facebook, please make sure that you do that, because I'll keep you posted on when the public hearings are happening and what the best ways are for you to voice your opinion. It's too bad that I guess property tax bills and the budget cycle don't align more, because I hear a lot of complaints once those things come out every year, and people don't realize that now is the time for you to voice that input. And I know, John, you came one year.
Yep.
and you sat through a lot of the testimony. You can attest that
it's a begging ritual.
yes,
It's
that the
crazy.
people who
It's
come
grotesque.
the people
It
who come
is.
before council are people who are receiving receiving some kind of financial benefit from the city, and they come and they say, we want you to increase this program, or I want you to increase my spending on my issue. And there are very few, if any, average Austinites who speak up and say, I am so tired of property tax increases and that irresponsible spending. And yeah, I think you were one of two of them that year. So, and yet I know that is not reflective of the populace in Austin as a whole. I mean, I know not just in my district, but across Austin, that affordability and cost of living is something that people are continuing to struggle with, again, across both sides of the aisle. So the homestead exemption actually would have been one thing that would have helped to address cost of living and reduce property taxes. And I'm sorry if I'm kind of beating a drum that y'all are all familiar with, but just a quick summary: the city and actually any county can enact up to 20% homestead exemption, which is basically a break on your property taxes for the house that you live in. Travis County already has that full exemption, and yet the city of Austin has chosen to not give homeowners that benefit. So that was one of the things that I ran on. It was one of the things that Mayor Adler ran on, and many other people on council, was getting to that 20% homestead exemption within 4 years. In fact, the council 2 years ago, we passed 6%, which was great, a quarter of the way there, and we passed a specific commitment to get to that 20% within 4 years. Unfortunately, last year the council only agreed to increase it an additional 2%. And this year, I couldn't find enough co-sponsors to even put it on the agenda. So I couldn't get 3 other council members to agree to even put it on the agenda for it to be discussed. So here we are 3 years later, we're less than half of the way there. We have an 8% exemption, so that's something. I've made progress, and I feel like that's something tangible that, I can bring back to, again, my district and the people of Austin, but there's still a lot of progress to be made, and my hope is that with council making such a specific commitment on that one issue, that there will be enough of an outcry from their constituents and the voters that we eventually have to make good on it. The last thing, CodeNet, yeah, go ahead.
Well, they considering they made a 4-year commitment on it, isn't next year an election year?
Yes.
Yes. For half of them.
Yes, exactly. Well, the last thing that I just wanted to touch on briefly was Code Next. It's a rewrite of our land development code. And has anybody in here tried to, I don't know, add a bedroom to their house, remodel, build anything in the city? It's a nightmare. It's a bureaucratic mess. It's expensive. It's confusing. And my hope is through this process we'll streamline it. And ultimately be able to increase our housing supply in the city, which will reduce the pressure on having so much demand and not enough supply to meet that demand, and ultimately kind of balance out housing prices. A lot of you probably know that I'm also a realtor, so I kind of see this firsthand in the market as well. I have clients who we in the real estate world we say drive until you qualify, because as the central Austin has gotten more and more expensive, and we're expanding further and further out into the suburbs. I mean, you have to drive, so at one point you only had to drive 15 minutes away from downtown to be able to find a $200,000 home. Now it keeps increasing, and now I have plenty of people who I have clients who have decided to move out of the city for the sole reason of the property. They can't afford the property taxes anymore, and they would rather be in a city that respects their tax dollars. So I'm hopeful that this process is kind of long and laborious and won't conclude until April of next year, or at least that's the target date if everything stays on track. So we will just have to. I'm going to continue to be an advocate for kind of doing what we set out to do and make things easier and not get derailed and somehow end up with an even more convoluted and complicated of an expensive process, which sometimes happens in government. But I'll keep on it. And anybody who is interested in getting more involved in that, it's kind of a complicated matter, but Brian is the office expert, and he would be happy to help you. And by the way, this is Brian. He works in the office, and honored to have him. So what else do we want to talk about? Yeah, how to get involved. I mean, I would say, first of all, thank you for inviting me here to have this kind of communication and conversation with y'all. I think it's important. I know it's so difficult. Everybody's so busy, and not only are you bombarded with everything that's happening at the federal level and at the state level, it's really hard to stay in tune with local politics, and it complicates matters that the seats are technically nonpartisan. So for people who go to the voting booth and kind of depend on a party, you don't have that crutch or that tool when you vote for school board or for city council. So it's really incumbent upon you to do your homework and to be very educated about the people who are running. Speaking of elections, 5 seats will be up next November. So the same time that the governor is on the ballot, everybody in Austin will be voting for 5 new council seats, depending on where you live. And I think that my one piece of advice is don't feel like because your council member isn't up for re-election, or there's not a council member, or there's not someone running in your district that you feel like you can get excited about, don't let that stop you from supporting someone else in a different district that you can get excited about. And of course, I would love your support. But there's going to be other seats as well that, and if people really only focus on their district, I guess it dilutes your voice, and you still have power. Every person on council, even if they don't specifically represent you, they get a vote on the dais, and the bottom line is, you need 6 votes for anything to pass. So all the help I can get would be appreciated. Those campaigns probably won't get started until next summer, but try to stay posted on it and get involved in it. Again, if you're not connected with me already on Facebook, please do it, because I try to keep people posted there. And I hope that my story is a little bit of an inspiration for some people out there. I know that there's lots of people who are stepping up to run for office, but I truly never thought that I wanted. I love politics and I love policy, but I was very happy to be behind the scenes, and always grateful that I didn't have to be the one standing up in front of people, public speaking and all of that. And that's not the path and plan that God had for me, and that's why I find myself here today. But just because you don't think it's something that you aspire to doesn't mean that it's not something that you might be called to do. So whether that's you or whether that's a neighbor or a friend who you think that would be a good public servant, we just need more good people in politics. That's just really all it comes down to. And man, local politics is so important because it impacts your pocketbook and your daily lives so much. And yet it's the thing that's easy, that really is easiest to get involved in. So I just would encourage you to take any opportunity that is presented to you and to support the people who you feel like are doing a good job.
I would say start small, and for me, get elected to your HOA board. Usually you don't have to run, you just volunteer and you're on. But it gives you experience of going to meetings, talking to people, hearing angry constituents, in your HOA, and then, parlay that to maybe city council or school board seat, and just work your way up. But there's a lot of things, precinct chair, that's an elected position, but nobody ever really runs or campaigns for that, and you can get involved on a little level and just work your way up to a bigger position. So sometimes I do too many of these little things. I can't focus on anything bigger, but there's a lot of opportunities for people to get involved.
I think that's great advice. Yeah.
Okay. So how big staff do you have?
We have, each council member has 4 full-time employees, or at least the budget for full-time employees, and the mayor has, he has like 15. I don't know. It's packed in his office. I have, the previous council had 3 full-time employees, and one of the first things that this council did was increase their own budgets, which is something that that I didn't support. And today I still, although I want to, I need the staff in order to do the best job that I can for my district, and I want everybody to be well compensated. I felt like it was important to do what I could to kind of practice what I preach and save the money where I can. And so every year I save anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 to give back to the district. I tried, my first year I tried to give it back in the form of property taxes, but it came out to such a small amount that it wasn't worth it. So instead of just giving it back to the general fund, which was my only other option, I spent it in local parks and things like that. So this year we were able, we put a new fountain, a water fountain in Circle C Park. We added a trailhead to one of the Greenbelt trailheads, things like that, little projects in the district that the city doesn't fund, but hopefully it's kind of my way of giving that money back to the people who gave it to the government in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah. Start with the Code Next stuff. I've read some of the what's been put up, and it doesn't make me really hopeful that there's going to be anything great in our future. And the word that I'd have to use is it was chaotic. Mm-hmm. Am I just living in my own head, or do other people feel that a lot of this stuff is pretty unrealistic?
I think that my biggest fear, and I don't know if we're talking about the same thing, but really my biggest fear is this thing that started out years ago with really the intention of making government more efficient. Is going to get so derailed in the process that we don't ever get there. One of the biggest dynamics at City Hall is kind of neighborhood. It's not even neighborhood associations. It's there are some, not all of them. You know, like I love my neighborhood in my neighborhood association, but
Parking meters and road humps,
there are some in the city who feel very strongly about protecting what they have. You know, protecting their neighborhood, especially in the central core. And what that has led to is a lack of density in our city, and that has led to ineffective public transportation and a long list of other things, and a strain on resources as people are forced further and further outside the city to find the kind of housing supply that we need to keep up with the demand. And you know, what's frustrating me as someone who represents a more suburban area is that then they turn around, then the council turns around sometimes, and when I'm advocating for, I don't know, more frequent bus service or roads in a certain area, they say, well, you know, it's their fault for moving so far out in the first place. They can't expect the same kind of services that people in the central city get and deserve. And it's so frustrating because they would love to live in the $1 million condo downtown if they could afford it. But guess what? They can't. Or they have kids and they need to be in a good school district, or whatever the case may be. You know, it's just this idea that kind of everybody should be should ride their bike to work and live within walking distance to their office, and the reality is that people can't afford it, and it must be nice for the people who can, and great, it's one more person that's off the road for the rest of us. But you know, especially with I have an 11-month-old daughter now, and I don't understand how are people with kids supposed to get their kids to daycare or to school or wherever else. I can't put my baby in like the basket on my bike, you know, and ride her around. So it's just kind of that attitude of, well, it's your fault that you moved out there in the first place is really disheartening and disappointing. And that's why I think, you know, for all of its flaws, I do think that the single member district system is important, so that at least there's kind of that diversity of opinion and people bringing up issues that people in different parts of the city experience in different ways. Anyway, back to your question. Sorry, I went off on the tangent there. But I am hoping, so anyway, the kind of people who really want to protect their neighborhoods and don't want to see that density, I understand where they're coming from. They don't want the additional traffic, and they have a great piece of property, and you know, maybe more people coming in will dilute the value. I don't know. I don't see that happening. But ultimately, they have had a very strong voice in the process so far, and I'm not sure that there's been quite a strong voice on the other side, kind of counteracting it. And so I think that some of the council members are maybe feeling political pressure in one direction. But I ultimately hope that we can kind of stay focused on the original mission. Otherwise, I won't. I mean, otherwise, if we get to the end of it and it's not, and I don't feel like it's streamlined and it's simplified, then I can't support it. And I have been a big advocate for it so far. So we'll just have to see what happens over the next few months, and ultimately it'll come down probably a lot to the mayor's leadership. I mean, he's the one that is directing a lot of the conversation on this issue. So.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my nutshell thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to say that I really appreciate what you've done. I helped a little bit get you elected, and I think my time was well spent. The one thing that I don't see in the city is any concerted effort to put pressure during council meetings on the council. As you said, you know, I was one of 2 or 3 people in the entire audience of, I don't know how many seats are in the theater there, because they were completely full, and there were masses of people on crutches, and I mean, it was like Lourdes. It was very strange.
We had 2 or 3 full 8-hour days of public testimony, so hundreds of people.
Yeah, and the utter lack of voices, other than raise taxes, give me more money. was pretty. It wasn't disheartening; it was irritating.
Yeah.
That is what the culture of Austin has been able to gin up.
Right. Well, and it's just, you know, I think it's true in a lot of parts of life. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and we have a system in Austin that really amplifies the voices of the squeaky wheels, because we have council meetings, you know, during the day on Thursdays, and a lot of times they go till 2 a.m. So who has the time and ability to sit through that kind of meeting? Not a lot of people in my district who have jobs and kids and all of those other things. So I oftentimes, and I've said this before, that it's really important for me and for the rest of the council to remember that we don't just represent the 10 people that are in the council chamber at that time advocating on one side of a particular issue. We represent our districts and the city as a whole, and there are a lot of people who are excluded from the process because of the way that it's set up. And that's just kind of what I mean, it's really difficult. It's very difficult being the only one. I mean, with Dawn and Sherry, at least there was some other people kind of at the table, often advocating on the same side of an issue. But when that all falls on my shoulders, it gets very frustrating sometimes, and it takes encouragement and support from people like y'all to kind of keep me going and to keep me motivated and inspired, and you know, remembering that what I'm doing is really important, and that voice is important, even if it doesn't mean that it's not ultimately, you know, successful in the vote count. But it's important that there's another perspective represented in the media, the people in the council chambers, etc. So, I mean, I do appreciate, and I try to send out, when I try not to waste y'all's time when I send out an action alert or hey, come help me here. It's because I really think that your voice is needed and important and necessary, and even if sometimes you can't make it to City Hall, because I know that people have lives, and you know, just call, email your council members, email everybody. It doesn't have to be just your council member. Email the whole council, because everybody sees the emails in their inbox. So
one thing I wanted to ask for, is there an email list that anybody's put together of council members, so that it would be easier to just give them all a heads up as to what me as a resident feel?
Oh yeah, if you go actually on the city council website, there's a button that you can email them all at one time.
Oh,
so yeah, it's
cool.
It's pretty easy. And another thing that I would want to suggest to this group is maybe consider writing op-eds for the papers. I mean, that's another way to kind of get your point of view, your frustration out there into an even greater audience than maybe just the specific council members. So I think that's a tool that sometimes we forget about, or we don't use as often as we should. That, yeah, write about it and send it to the statesman and whoever else who might be interested.
So you have one more question, yeah.
Hey, Hal.
Okay. It has to do with bicycles.
Okay.
Recently I saw a report that they're going to put up some lights for bicycles. Kind of like you got a signal light for the cars, and you can put up a light for the bicycles. And I'm not judging one way or the other on what that's going to hit. But the bicycles, the people who ride the bicycles have an inordinate amount of power over the city. The other people that drive cars don't have power. And I just wish they wore this, you know, each person would wear some kind of ribbon that showed how much they're getting from the city, or how much power they have with the city, you know, on their person. And I bet those bicyclists would just be covered in those ribbons as they drive along the road. And as they don't even obey the law of how to drive. Like I was in the right lane, turning right on Cesar Chavez off of Congress, and I was going to turn right. I had to right from the light to turn right, and fortunately, in the last minute, I saw a guy on my right side, right on the curb, go across. I could have easily, I could have hit him if I hadn't, you know, jerked and stopped.
Right.
You know, that's, anyway, I know I'm just saying something that we've said for seems like hundreds of years.
Right. Yep. No. No, you're right, and that's not the only issue that kind of a smaller group of people tend to have an inordinate amount of influence over the council, and that's just something that it's just the reality, and it's something that we need to recognize and expose, and to the extent that that's not representative of what the city as a whole wants to see, which, by the way, I think that they want us to focus on reducing traffic and filling the potholes and really prioritizing our transportation needs. We need to, again, just support the council members who are doing that, and get good people elected. So I hope my hope is, just one more thing that I've been thinking about as on council is, especially after going through all the ride sharing and short-term rental issues last year, this young, vibrant city that likes to think of itself as very tech-driven and innovative really got a black eye and damaged its reputation by banning short-term rentals and causing Uber and Lyft to leave the city until the state was put in place reasonable regulations that allowed them to come back. And I hope, just as for the young people in the audience and for and I guess for the rest as well, that is such a great opportunity for us to reach out to millennials and show them how big government is not always the best thing. It sometimes seems like particular candidates or parties are cool, but in reality, man, I really liked when I could get an Uber to home after I'm done, having dinner or whatever downtown. And man, I really loved when I could rent a short-term rental for a staycation, for a bachelorette party, or whatever it is. And I think that those were really good examples of how limited government really has an impact on people's lives, and really can increase your freedom, increase your economic opportunity, increase your ability to move upward within that economic opportunity, etc. And so I'm kind of hoping that the continuation, that the bad example that Austin has set when it comes to those kinds of issues will resonate with the millennials who are going to be, who are current voters and who are going to be the future voters of the state and country. Okay, one more question.
Okay.
And you had one too. All right, I'll answer Adam's too.
Anybody else? Any question?
Okay.
Go ahead.
One of the things that was most disturbing about the Uber deal was that I was fortunate to get kind of a look inside the influencing process that goes on in Austin. I have a question. Do you know how much money and how many and how it's done? Because Austin does an enormous amount of that influence stuff with our taxpayer money.
You mean to the legislature or what?
Well, overall, yes, to the legislature, around the council itself. They have some through the there was a league you were talking about earlier. They have their influencing arm,
Right.
and it's all taxpayer paid for.
Right. Yeah.
And so they're actually, and this is a judgment. You didn't say any of this. They're actually working against the people they serve for their own interest, and that to me is the most worrisome part of local governments in Texas.
Right.
Is the lobbying efforts that they have ongoing, and the amount and diversion of funds that change things. And the Uber situation was a prime example of that.
Right.
Because that's what's being done.
And Austin spends almost $1 million every year on not just our Austin City employee government relations staff, but almost $1 million on contract lobby staff as well. That go to the Capitol and often lobby to the detriment of an opposite side of where I stand, and I think to the detriment of the citizens of Austin. So, and everybody has you have a right to free speech, right? I want to protect your ability to go to your state representatives and go to your elected officials and say whatever you want. It's just when I'm forced to pay for it, for you to advocate against what I think, and then I got chastised at a public council meeting about me going to the Capitol and speaking my mind. I went to the Capitol.
I know, it was
during
outrageous.
session.
That was the most outrageous
Right,
thing I've ever seen in my
about
life.
3 things.
Right,
I mean,
you didn't
believe me, I could have.
represent the council.
I had plenty of opinions about a lot of other bills too, but I went to the Capitol on 3 issues. One was property tax, the rollback rate. Number 2 was Uber and Lyft, and number 3 was short-term rentals, because those were issues that I knew were important to me, important to my constituents, and I feel like I had a unique perspective as someone who's serving in the city of Austin who had direct experience on all 3 of those issues. And to have come back to the council and like I said, be kind of chastised and shamed in a public council meeting for going on behalf of myself as a private citizen to speak my mind on those 3 issues was just really astounding to me, when taxpayers are spending over $1 million in Austin on lobbyists to do the same thing. And by the way, the mayor and the rest of council are up at the Capitol all the time, talking in favor of whatever the city of Austin's agenda is. So the idea that I shouldn't have a right to free speech, and in fact I should fund your right to it, is just so beyond corrupt to me.
So who chastised you, mayor?
Doesn't make any sense.
The chamber.
The mayor and other council members are up at the Capitol all the time testifying.
Yeah, no,
You
but
never
who-
said you were representing the city council. You're
No,
doing it
I
on
said
your behalf.
I specifically said that I was representing myself.
Yeah.
I would say I serve on the Austin City Council, but I'm here representing myself.
You didn't do anything wrong, and I'm glad
Oh,
you were there.
absolutely, and I'm not going to apologize for it, because I absolutely know that I didn't do anything wrong. And it occurred to me that it wouldn't be upsetting if it wasn't impactful, and that's what I just need to remember, that if you're not making anybody mad, you've never stood up for something, or whatever that saying is. So I'm okay with ruffling feathers every once in a while when I know that I'm standing up for the right thing.
Yeah, a couple. One, do you have any idea where we're at on the transportation bond implementation? And 2, are you aware of any new debacles in the pipeline about which we should be aware of and attempt to get out in front of?
No, those are good questions. So on the transportation bond, the city will be approving $6 million to spend on basically on bicycle design this Thursday. So so that's kind of the next step in that process. I think that it's going to continue to come to us kind of piecemeal. And my hope is that the city transportation department will really prioritize the corridors and the things that I feel like led most people to support the bond, which is improving our road infrastructure and reducing traffic. And so although I'm hopeful that will happen, I'm not confident that it will. So
There's the first-
I don't know that there's much. I'm going to continue to advocate for my district, and I do think that there is going to be some flexibility and leeway and influence that the council will have over how that money is spent, for better or worse. So it's just something that I need to stay on top of and keep monitoring. And we were even talking in the office this morning, like, well, the voters approved it. Does that mean that based on the fact that it's an agenda item, like if there was just $6 million to spend on bicycle lights, probably I wouldn't support it on a regular agenda. Does the fact that the voters approved it have a greater impact? And it's so difficult to know, because I don't know what bucket. There was so much involved in that transportation bond that I don't really know what parts people supported and what parts people
The voters
opposed.
had no idea.
Right, and so
And
that
they just voted for
that
a bond
justifies.
to improve transportation.
Right, and to the extent that there is money being spent and projects coming forward that are going to reduce traffic, I'm going to support them because gosh, if we're going to spend $720 million, hopefully we get something for it. But
So is
I
that
don't
the
think
first?
sorry?
Is that the first bill that's coming out of it? 6
No, we've
million?
already approved. We approved something else. I think that was
It's a
5.
sidewalk.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
approved some sidewalk spending before. So we still haven't kind of seen any major spending on the road piece of it. But I'm hopeful that they're just bigger projects and maybe they take more planning. But I'm hopeful that they're coming. As far as upcoming issues, really the budget is going to be one I'm focused on right now over the next month or so, and I'll know more once we see the proposed budget from the city manager tomorrow. Where, one thing that I think is going to be interesting, I think what's going to happen is that the city manager, that the mayor has asked the city manager to basically not spend all the money in the budget this year. That while we can go up to 8% rollback rate, that they're going to try.
Is that what they proposed?
To go, well, I'm sure it is what they will propose, but I think that he asked her to leave some kind of cushion, not because he hopes that the council will actually reduce taxes, but because he wants the council to have the leeway of how to spend those last $5 or $10 million. So I'm hoping that may make my job easier. That instead of me kind of having to come in and find the savings and be accused of cutting places, that it will kind of already be, well, this budget is pretty good, just how it is. Maybe we should just pass it and save the taxpayers $10 million. So we'll see how that process shakes out. But this is the first time we have an interim city manager. That's probably a good thing to kind of keep track of, the city manager search. Elaine Hart has been great so far, but she's not going to be the permanent city manager. So we're going through the process right now. We don't have any final candidates or anything like that yet, but we've hired the search firm and we have a citizens task force and kind of going through the steps of the vetting process and accepting kind of applications and interest for a city manager, and that will be one of the biggest decisions that this council makes. Absolutely, that person will might be in Austin for much longer than I'm serving, and to the extent that we can get somebody really smart and hardworking and efficient and effective in there, that really will have a huge impact on the city. So we'll see. Anyways, we'll see how the budget turns out and go from there. But I'm just really hoping that SB1 passes in a decent form.
Go long, y'all.
So,
Okay.
thank you guys so much.
Can we get a quick picture of everybody?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Where do you?
Yeah, just stand up here. Everybody just come up front and we'll
I
just
don't
gather
think
around.
I can take it by myself.
Okay.
Come on here.
Yeah, it's one of those times.
That's a good idea.
On our website, right?
Yeah, it's automatic, so just hold it down for like 2 seconds, it'll autofocus and press it.
Alright. Yeah. Everybody squeeze in, turn sideways, you know.
Yeah, there we go. Since you're leaving. Looks like a wedding photo.
Okay, everyone.
And you can zoom it by turning the knob a little bit.
Get a better.
Vinegar to be the
You
star.
were pointing the photo?
Mike?
Come on, come on, come on.
Okay. Alright, everybody smile, act like you like each other.
Good
1,
doing.
2.
Is it taking?
Oh,
no.
wrong button. Okay, 1, 2. Take another one.
Take one more.
Alright.
I like to make some candidates in there.
That's right.
Thank you guys. I'm gonna run home and try to catch my baby before she goes to sleep.
Okay.
But y'all. Yeah.